Be yourself.
It's about reinventing ourselves when we feel stuck.
We all want that breakthrough.
But how do we get there?
Deconstructing a version that you're in that's not compatible with the destiny you want, and reconstructing into a version that's compatible.
You're able to be your true self.
If you can be empowered for your purpose.
Totally. It's what matters.
So let's talk about what matters.
So Joey,
Hello.
recovery is the anchor value of what you do.
Yes, that's correct.
So let's talk about why it's so important.
Well, the mainstay of my background and where I've come from, obviously, with it being a physical aspect in the coaching world, and how I came into this the coaching environment itself as well, is from a training perspective in terms of physical pursuit. So we, as personal trainers, we're all about hitting goals and hitting targets and helping people achieve things. But a massive thing that's overlooked in the whole personal training sector, and sort of defines the definition between a trainer and a coach, is to look at the other factors outside of the actual training. So for me, I've taken a pursuit on the training side of things, into recovery. And it's a case of, it's great to train, and it's great to look after your body and, stay fit and healthy, but it's also important to repair. It's like you would if if your car was suffering, you wouldn't continue driving it. If it started getting a knock in the engine, you wouldn't just keep going and going and going until it stopped. You're supposed to take it to the mechanic.
We're supposed to.
So we're supposed to, yeah. But we have this supposed to thing. We do the same with our own bodies.
Yeah.
It's like, to recover properly is really important. A lot of it is said in our world, in the training world, is make sure you stretch, make sure you do your flexibility work. But it's not just as simple as that. Like it's looking after your recovery in terms of, when you do train, for example, you get micro tears in the muscles, and to help aid in that, you need to look after your nutrition, which is part of your recovery.
Really? So
yeah.
Can you elaborate on that? What can you do with nutrition to help with recovery?
So within nutrition, you have to eat right. Like you have to eat right for basically what you've done. If you're on a weight loss journey, for example, the common conception is you look at your calories and you eat less calories than your body's physical output of calories, and that way that caloric deficit will result in weight loss. But if you had a heavy training session, for example, and then you go and eat a very low calorie diet, and you don't have the right amounts of proteins and fats that your body needs to help with repair, then you're going to put that repair on a bit of a setback. So it's, yes, in terms of weight loss and things like that, having this caloric deficit is definitely key in terms of helping with that. That doesn't mean that you deprive yourself so much of these key nutrients, especially fats, which people think is a bad thing. And
thankfully, that's starting to change now, but it's taken a while for people to get into their heads that low-fat diets are nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of dieting in the idea of what's being put out there in the media, for example, is that you have to follow this specific diet if you're going to lose weight. This is the fastest way to do it, the quickest way to do it. Where at the end of the day, these diets are mostly people's opinions, as opposed to, having a good, healthy, balanced diet. Like, everybody's different. Everybody has a different body. We all have allergies. We all have different sorts of ways that we digest our food, different sorts of ways that we deal with our food. Like, people have peanut allergies, for example. So if I go, okay, the latest and greatest thing is a peanut diet, well, that's not going to be right for people that are allergic to peanuts. And it's my opinion that that's the greatest and latest diet. It's not going to necessarily be right for everybody. It might work for me, but it might not work for everybody. I'm not saying that peanuts are a great way to, lose weight or anything like that. It's just a silly example. But what I'm trying to say is it's not going to be right for everybody.
Yeah.
So to look at nutrition for itself, you really need to look at, okay, what have I actually done? if I've done a big workout, let's say you go for a 10K run, your muscles will be tired, your joints will be very, very sore, you'll probably burn a lot of calories. So you will need to refuel to be able to help your body repair. Getting lots of proteins to help with muscle repair, getting lots of fat in to help replenish energy stores, things like that.
But that seems counterintuitive to people trying to lose weight. It's like, what? You're asking me to put the very things that I'm trying to get rid of back into my body? And the answer is absolutely, because your body needs to constantly be rebuilding things that are important to you to function. And if you start seeing it as just an annoying overweight mass, then you are abusing the instrument.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you're going to chow down on just fat and lots of fatty foods and like burgers and fries and things like that.
Well, let me write that down.
Then, it's going to have negative effects because, you can't just eat fats and think, I'm going to lose weight just because the guy says, no, now the new
fats aren't bad.
Yeah, fats aren't bad.
I'm going to devour them.
Yeah. So
what part of balance can't you digest?
Exactly. But this is where the whole prepare, train, and recover thing comes in, because the preparation is all about, looking at what I'm actually going to be doing and making sure I do that preparation. Get the education in to understand what you're about to do. But then also you have that education going into your recovery, so you understand what you need to eat, what you need to do after post-training.
You know what I find fascinating about what you're sharing is that you're basically saying, if you understand what you're doing when you are exercising and what your body is doing and where you end up in your body, then you'll appreciate what you need to do to restore balance. But if you're blindsided by how much impact and exhaustion and depletion that you are causing certain elements of your body that are critical to repair, then you are being negligent, not purposefully, but simply because we're not educated. We're being negligent. We're being blindsided off being sustainable in the way we exercise. Like, exercise is so important, but I know that every time I exercise, I end up injuring myself, and then I have to wait a while before I'm good again. And I got really, really tired of that, but I wasn't seeing the education like you're sharing for me to really appreciate that I was being naive, ignorant, and therefore negligent.
Yeah, I mean, you can punish yourself.
I'm not punishing myself, but I'm being real with the fact of what I was doing.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not just saying for yourself. I mean, people can punish themselves for, saying I went in too strong or too this or too that. And, it's more a case of taking the time. It's like we take for granted. But we don't have
time, apparently, Joey.
Everybody has the same 24 hours.
Time poor.
But I mean, it's like education is the key to understanding. It's not necessarily the key to success, but it's the key to understanding what you're doing. Like, if you do rush into things because Jenny down the road says that this is the latest and greatest thing, you should try it out, and then you do it, and then you get injured for yourself. It's not the fact that you shouldn't feel hard on yourself because you've gone out and you've gone, I want to make a positive change for myself. That's a good thing. But you've taken the advice of somebody that very different from you, may have different chemical makeup, may have, different genetics, different body structure. They may have been exercising for a lot longer than you. Just because they say that this is the latest and greatest thing, you don't do the due diligence of going, okay, am I in the right physical condition to do this? We walk around for the most part, a lot of the time, with injuries.
Actually, that's a very good point. And the way I would help people really understand that is that if your GPS navigation for your destination is B, your GPS can't get you to B unless you know where you currently are as A. And so, in other words, if you aren't truly assessing yourself and knowing where you're at, then the advice you're given is never put into context.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And I have to admit that I haven't known how to properly assess what it is about my technique when I run, or when the condition of my feet and ankles in respect to that.
Yeah.
Because I've come to understand, after ruling out from MRI scans and blood tests, that I was putting way too much pressure on my feet because I had weaker ankles, and my brain had wired to put more pressure on my feet and ease off the ankles. And when I'm daily running, then that's obviously leading in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and this is the case where we're a very symptomatic culture, in terms of we just look at the symptoms and think that's the problem. Whereas, you go, oh, let's say I went and tried out this new thing. I injured myself because this seemed to have happened. That might not be the actual cause of the problem. That might have happened over a period of time, especially for people that are overweight. If your body's not strong and capable enough to deal with that amount of weight on the structure of your skeleton, for example, your joints are coming under so much pressure that you could be having grinding, your cartilage could be wearing away. All sorts of symptoms could be happening. I'm no doctor, so I can't medically give my, this is basically all my opinion.
But you could be mindful of these issues and start to look at ways not to create those issues or make them worse.
Exactly. But we go into and try these new things, and then, you go and think, I came out of it and I hurt my ankle. People go, oh, it's my ankle that's the problem. And it's like, well, yes, you probably have got weak ankles because of a long time that you put your body under this pressure of having so much weight bear down on your ankles that it has caused this symptom.
Yes.
That is now resulting in this problem.
Yes.
But if you go back and you look at and you do your due diligence and really look, it's more likely to be the long-term effect that your body has had on that particular area that has caused this. And that doesn't mean that you can't go and do this. You just need to get your body better prepared to be able to take on this kind of this task. But, this is where the recovery comes into preparation as well, is looking at things and it's like, okay, well, these symptoms are occurring. Do I just carry on going and just think, whatever, it's not stopping me from doing this? Like, injury is one thing, but people pull up sore and things like that from doing specific training sessions, and they just go, oh man, my knees are hurting, but it's just old age, it's just this, it's just that. They don't actually take the time to look at this recovery thing and go, okay, well, I need to go and possibly visit a chiropractor to get my knees assessed, or go and visit a physician to get my body assessed, and then go and look at maybe getting this done or that done, to try and aid in that. But even in when there's nothing wrong, that doesn't mean that you just stop and you don't think about recovery. You've got to look at the damage that the training has had on your actual muscles, on the joints themselves. Like if you get too cold too quickly and you don't warm down properly, for example, this is where, you get tight ligaments, tight muscles. And once those muscles stay tight and they get tighter and tighter and tighter because you keep neglecting this recovery, this is where joints come out of place and you get imbalances. There'll be that time where you go and run or jump or do something and your body is that out of position because you've been neglecting your recovery that you do yourself an injury. And I'll hold my hand up and say that's exactly what I did when I tore my ligaments in my knee.
Well, I was about to say, how do you know all this? So for me, I'm thinking important information like this should be common knowledge, but it isn't, because you just explained to me something that my brain went, oh, okay, which is prolonged non-stretching tightens ligaments, which then puts a lot of strain on joints and throws them out of place.
Yeah. And like I said, I can hold my hand up and say I've done exactly the same thing in my past. I'll never be able to prove why my knee and my ACL tore, but I look back at the history about what happened before. It was almost 2 years ago now, but it happened in July. Then I look back into January. I was in a jiu-jitsu competition and hurt my ankle. And rather than recover and allow my time, I continued to train. I just thought, you know what, it'll get better. Don't worry about it. Don't do any extra work or anything like that. And then from jiu-jitsu, I went to start playing soccer. The first game that I pulled in soccer or football, I pulled up, my quad was really tight and my quad got really sore. And I did my due diligence this time. I went to the chiropractor and got it assessed, and I got it treated so that I could play. I didn't look and go, okay, well, I've actually injured myself here. Maybe I should look at, what's actually going on and do the recovery work. I just got chiropractor, treated it, and I was like, great, I can go and play again. I feel a lot better. And a couple of weeks later, I tore my ACL. And is that the cause of why my ACL tore? I don't know. I'll never be able to prove that. But thinking back to it, it's like, well, I never did any recovery work during that time. Like, I didn't go and say, okay, maybe I need to go and have a sauna or an ice bath, for example, to help aid in the recovery for the damage that I've done to my quads. I didn't look at any compression work. I don't even think I did any real stretching. Like, I would have done the cool down that we do in the actual after the game, but obviously with having an injury, I need to do something extra on that. And I don't think I did from my own memory. So now it's looking at that, and, that put me backwards in life massively, massively. It affected my job. It affected my own personal health, mental health, physical health. And the impact that it made, that it's so strong now that the preparation and recovery, for me, another level compared to the training. Obviously, the training is important, but if you're not prepared and you're not recovering properly, then at the same time, you think that the training is the key part. Like in relation to EP7, the training is, it's a little bit of the education and keeping going and all about making it happen. And, but the recovery is really linking the whole sector bit together within environmental alignment and linking the whole circle of what EP7 really does. I mean, it's, if you just prepare and train, then, you're still neglecting this part of being environmentally aligned. Whereas if you just train and recover, you're neglecting this part of preparation. You're never really going to help yourself. You're never going to grow.
Well, some of the principles right from step one, when you look at the 52 principles, they include things like balance, patience, causality. Like, in other words, get to the truth of where your body's at, what you're doing, and therefore be informed, be intuitive to what's really going on, and restore the balance. Like, don't just push and expect that what you're doing has no consequences. Feel what's going on. And I think what happens for us is no pain, no gain. And there's a real masculine dimension to exercise where you're being strong, and that if you're feeling pain, like I remember tearing my tendons off the bone in my shoulder because I was doing like literally 50 push-ups in a row, having 1 or 2 minutes break, 30 after that, bit of a break. I was getting to 100 push-ups, and I was feeling the burn in my right shoulder, and I'm thinking, look at me, look how strong I am. My muscles are like, yeah. And seriously, it took me 1.5 years to eventually get the patience to rebuild my shoulder by doing nothing for a while, then push-ups on the wall to rebuild it, all because I was being reckless.
Yeah, and then this is the perfect point where recovery really comes down into it. It's like, yes, like with any exercise, that you will feel burns and small aches and pains as you push yourself through, but it's first of all having the education to know the difference between something that's an early warning signing that your body's telling you through, like lactic acid buildup or muscular exhaustion, things like that. But then there's a difference between that and injury. Like your body's got completely different signs to tell you, but we seem to rush so hard into things that we don't have the education to tell the difference. We just think pain I can push through this. I'm tough enough. I can keep going. And, through competition and things like that, it happens. People, do push through pain. But the problem is you get through to that pain and you go straight back to the training aspect again. You completely neglect the recovery. You neglect the fact that, okay, well, whether there's pain, whether it's an injury or it's just exhaustion, you still need recovery. You still need that time to let your muscles, if you have any sort of tears, whether it's a micro tear through growth of muscles, which is normal with any sort of physical exercise, or it's a very large tear in terms of injury, you will be in a lot of pain if you don't look at the inflammation side of things and what happens to your body. And as we know through personal health and our discussions before, inflammation is very bad, especially in the gut when it comes down to having control of your intuition and things like that. So inflammation in the muscles is just as bad. So you need a way to do that.
Joey, why is inflammation bad if the body's responding to a problem internally, and inflammation is obviously a process it is triggering because it feels is important? Is it that if the body is inflamed, we're meant to be completely rested so that the body can do what it's meant to do? Or is there something going wrong with nature in our body? What's going on there?
Inflammation has its purpose. Everything within the body has its purpose.
Yeah,
it has its reason. Its reason for being. But there are things that exacerbate inflammation, like poor diet will exacerbate inflammation in the gut. Poor recovery from training will exacerbate inflammation in joints, in muscles.
So what you're saying is, if the body has a inflammation process, what we do is we create an environment where the inflammation gets out of control. We don't give it the optimal environment so that inflammation plays a role. We make it worse.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. Like with your nutrition, for example, this is where we're going back to the start of the conversation before. You have inflammation in your gut, for example, and then you go and slam down a lot of acidic foods, a lot of the wrong foods that you need to help your body recover. All that's going to happen is the inflammation is going to get worse. Same in a training perspective. If you're inflamed in your shoulder and you carry on training through that without doing the necessary recovery work, you're going to exacerbate the inflammation in there. And all it's going to do is keep getting more inflamed and inflamed and inflamed and inflamed. It's not going to just magically disappear.
What is the damage happening when you too inflamed? At some point, low range to medium inflammation, I'm just guessing here, is normal. And it's because there's an injury and the body's going to work with obviously heating up the area, there's a lot of action going on for healing in that area. What happens when it's forced to overdo it? The body can only manage so much until you push it beyond its capability.
Yeah, I'll go from only personal experience here. I can't give any medical opinions and things like that. But for example, when I tore my knee instantly became inflamed because of a massive trauma to a certain area. Yeah. So the inflammation is a way of the body restricting movement in that particular area. Right. And it pushes a lot of swelling, a lot of fluids in there because it knows that there's a lot of repair work that needs to be done. So it restricts movement in the area and puts all white blood cells and all the nutrients and it sends signals
to the brain to say no go. This is a no go zone. Do not move it.
Exactly. So that's what happens in terms of injury. So imagine you have you get slight inflammation after training, for example, and you constantly feed that inflammation. The inflammation is there to tell you to maybe just restrict the movement of that for now because something's happened in there that needs the body's attention. But if you keep feeding that inflammation, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And the restriction of movement is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And it's because your body's constantly having to work on repairing this particular area. So there's, even the scientific ways that you can deal with this, like the easy thing, which is in my opinion, not the greatest thing is to go to the medicine cabinet and pop an anti-inflammatory pill. But all that does is mask the actual causality of what's going on. It just, the pain goes away, the inflammation goes away, but it's not actually treating the area. Whereas you can have natural anti-inflammatories like ice. We know for anyone who's ever done any medical training, that ice is a great natural anti-inflammatory. But what it's also doing, the ice, is helping the actual area recover. Like it helps within the actual clearing out, with heat and ice constricting blood flow to help force through and clear any debris. Whereas an anti-inflammatory pill won't do that. It just works on the inflammatory side of things.
That makes sense.
And the same with the compression. Like we had the Normatec compression pants on before, and it works in a similar way that it grips around the area, restricts the blood flow, and then it restricts it to help the body work harder to force through more blood into that area. And then once the compression releases, the blood is flowing quite heavily so that it is cleaning out and clearing that area and helping with the repair process a lot more, because you get a lot more traffic in that area.
Yeah.
It's like just one handyman going to fix a big job versus a team of professionals going in to fix that same job. Who's going to get it done quicker? And it's not so much about speed, but it's more about efficiency as well. It's like the more people that you've got to collaborate on a building site to do some repair works, they're going to work together as a team to get things done smarter.
Especially if they're native to the building site. In other words, the blood that flows better, you've got the most equipped, most informed, specialized, entities working in the area versus you putting in a foreign object in your body and then it goes in and it tries to restore some balance or mitigate what's going on. You're getting your own natural ecosystem in your body that knows what's going on, and if you let it go where the problem is in a more facilitated way through compression and ice, then that makes sense to me. Like, let your body heal itself. How can you create conditions for your body to heal itself? Drugs have a place, but definitely oversubscription and a misunderstanding of the problem can often not really create what the sustained healing and repair that you're after.
Yeah, this has a lot to do with the short-term, long-term effects of recovery. Like a pill is a short-term effect, whereas doing consistent recovery work, and I'm not saying go and jump on a $3,000 piece of equipment or go and sit yourself in an ice bath or a sauna. I'm talking about things like doing mobility work, doing your stretching, cooling down properly. If you do have a bit of tightness or soreness, looking at that particular area, maybe doing a bit of foam rolling, then if you can start to look at things like massage, acupuncture, things like Normatec, ice bath, saunas, things like that. You can then go and look at that after if you want extra. But to pop a pill will solve a short-term effect. Like, let's say you pull up sore from an activity. I'm not saying training, could be something at home, and you have a stiff back. You pop an anti-inflammatory pill, the inflammation goes away, but the body doesn't learn. The body just thinks, I just had a chemical reaction that got that away, that came in through me doing nothing. So all it's going to do is wait for that chemical reaction to come again. Whereas if you're
making the body codependent
yeah,
on outside influences.
Exactly. Whereas if you do recovery work, you're treating the body. You're actually looking at the areas that need the work done to them, and you're doing the help and the necessity of stuff that your body really needs to, let's say, look after a back, for example. I'm not saying if you've got a sore back, go and use a foam roller, but you need to know, okay, well, I've got a sore back, so I'm not going to continue to do stuff first off. Popping a pill, yes, it might help me in the short term, but why is my back flared up? What has happened? Is it to do with my movements? Is it to do with my mobility? Is it to do with the technique that I've used? And this is where the the training and recovery side and the preparation side all come together as one, because you need to really look at all three.
Yeah.
Because it's just because you've hurt your back doesn't mean it needs to get stronger. It could be something that's restricting your mobility in your knees that's caused you to bend down in that particular way to pick up that object that's put your back out. It could be a strength issue. It could be a flexibility issue. It could be a mobility issue. But if you don't go and, first of all, recover and then go back to the preparation, you're just going to do the same thing over and over and over again. So it's a case of doing your due diligence, recovering properly, and not just in the short term, in the long term, doing things that will consistently help to improve those certain things that you need to work on. Like, for example, I had a cyclist come in today, constantly complains of bad hips, and he came in for a recovery session, but I looked at his mobility first off and found that he's got very restricted mobility around his hips and his glutes and his hip flexors, things like that. So it's a case of, okay, well, to prepare for a training session or to prepare for a ride, which is the training part, you have to work on the mobility of the hips, make sure that you're training the body to become more open in those particular areas. Then after your sessions, you recover properly because you know those areas are specific to work on, because you know you've got issues. You need to do things like proper stretching in those areas. Ice baths are great for recovery in terms of inflammation. Foam rolling, trigger pointing, massage, acupuncture, even the Normatec to increase blood flow in those areas all have benefits. I'm not saying you need to go to that length and extreme of this particular cyclist, but if you are going to do things like that, you need to have all those positions in place, because if you just continue to cycle and cycle and cycle and cycle, nothing's going to get any better. Probably just going to get worse. And you're going to feel like you're not getting anywhere. And it's going to get to a point where you start to give up on the cycling because you just feel like, I'm too old. My body isn't right for it anymore.
The biggest problem when we come up with labels of, oh, that's just that, like old age, or, oh, that's just normal, no pain, no gain, is that the brain stops being a critical thinker because it assumes it's arrived at the truth and there's nothing else to see, nothing else to tune into.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I see the brain as a logical piece of equipment. If you look at it as...
it's meant to be.
Yeah. So it balances yes versus no, right versus wrong, good versus evil, those sorts of things. So if you only give it a certain amount of information, that's the only information it's got to deal with. So let's take the cycler, for example. If you only give the brain cycling, it just knows cycling, and then it will deal with the effects of that cycling. And if you continually go and go and go and go and don't look after these other things on the side that you really should be, all the brain just sees is, well, last time I rode this distance, I did this, and now I'm doing the same distance, I'm feeling sore. And now I'm doing the same distance again, I'm feeling sore and not as powerful. It just deals with those logical battles, and then comes to a solution, which is based off your own beliefs that now I'm too old, or now I'm not fit enough. Whereas if
it draws conclusions based on its limited perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, how does that link to our psychological behavior in terms of other parts of our life? Like, this is one of my biggest learning factors throughout this entire injury journey, is that so many things are identical in the way we need to treat certain events. Like, I've now come to this conclusion from having this massive trauma to my leg that recovery and preparation are so key in sport that I can increase my performance through looking after these things, not just maintaining where I'm at, but increasing my performance and getting better with age. And the same can be said for a lot of stuff that happens in my own personal life. Like, I'm talking psychological things now, is if I prepare and recover from things, and I've experienced with this for you personally through EP7, that if I take all the due diligence and prepare, and like we were saying off air before, like doing steps 1, 2, 3, and 4, that empowered identity, really learning about yourself, taking time to do personal assessments and really assessing situations, developing your imagination and your intuition helps with, dealing with factors of normal everyday life, of the logical side of your decisions and things like that. So you can make it happen and then become more aligned with what you're actually doing. Like, I think that one of the biggest factors for me is learning this through my own personal relationship with my partner. I've become so much more grounded and so much more, I think the word would be emotionally unbalanced. Like, I used to have epic highs. Don't get me wrong, the epic highs were great, but they also came with epic lows when dealing with certain situations that affected my own relationships. But now I'm doing this preparation, taking time to really personally assess situations that happen to me, staying in touch and listening to my intuition or my gut instinct, so to speak. That now when these situations come, I don't have these same epic highs and epic lows. I can sit back and actually take the time because now I understand really what's happening. And the same has gone for my training, as it's gone for my relationships, as it's gone for my business, as it's gone for my friendships, as it's going through everything in my life. The way I deal with things now is so much more aligned. It's so great.
Well, it's such a great discipline to know that what environment you create with your purpose. Like, if you know why you're doing something, whether it's you're about to engage exercise, you're about to engage a partner in a relationship for an occasion, if you know the values in which you want to engage, then the preparation phase becomes beautiful because you're optimizing the environment for you to perform. Then, if you really know why you're doing it, beyond that, it's that you're so in touch with the experiences, anything that's not aligned, through it to the other side gives purpose to the recovery. In other words, I set out to achieve this. I now have inflammation. In other words, the inflammation could be physically in your body. The inflammation could be in friction, in an argument with your partner. What is it about how my intention was to connect and now I'm experiencing non-alignment, like disconnection? What is it about that I now need to honor, address, understand, to restore, to repair the connection? Because for me, if I prepared for it, as I experienced it, I was given feedback, and coming out the other side, is there anything to recover from because something was missed? And with exercise and the whole physicality of exertion, this is, I was going to say to you earlier, biologically, as human beings, we're not meant to push consistently. We're meant to be balanced. If we're hunting, for example, in our primal history, it's a burst of exhaustion. It's a burst of sprinting to catch up to something. It's long walking to get to a place where there's game or to hunt or something, right? But then what happens is that there's an abundance of what you've hunted that takes care of you, your family, your tribe. So you're literally chilling out for quite a while before you hunt again. Like, this is primitive. So biologically, we've been designed with a balance of, yes, you do exertion, but then you're sitting under the shade of a tree, connecting, playing with your child, just being silly, having fun. But unfortunately, we've come to a place in our existing environment where it's like an insatiable appetite for success, for profit, for status. And it's like push for the sexiest body ever. Push for the most profitable business ever. And there's no sense of true purpose of why you're doing all this beyond some weird understanding that we're chasing validation, reward to say that, yes, we belong in this world because we've proven it to people, because we've got that sexy body that's attractive, we've got that sexy business that people want to buy from. Like, at the end of the day, why are we doing this? because I think preparation and recovery would always be key elements of how we do anything.
Yeah.
If we really know the purpose of what we're doing.
Well, that's true. I mean, it's like we weren't designed to hunt 24 hours a day and then just get a little bit of rest, get up and start hunting again. You know, once we hunt and we caught our game, had our kill, or it doesn't necessarily need to be killing an animal, it could be even hunting to get fruits and vegetables, you know. Once we get that, we don't, we take it back and then go out and start hunting again. We share it between our tribe. We sit down and we enjoy the fruits of what we've achieved, and we share that within our community. And then when it's time to go out and hunt again, we go out and hunt again. It's not a consistent hunt. I mean, you see so many goal-focused people these days, which is, it's not a bad thing to have, to be focused on goals, but they're focused on so many goals, on so many different wavelengths, that it is a consistent hunt. Like, let's take a day, for example. You may go to gym, you may go to work, then you may go to try and find a partner. It's hunt in the morning, got to get that perfect body. Hunt at work, got to meet these numbers, got to meet these deadlines, got to meet this, got to meet that, got to get this, got to get that. Then it's at night time. It's like, okay, I've got to hunt for a partner. I've got to go out. I've got to go and get this. And it's this constant need to stay like so alert all the time, and constantly hunting is, what are we actually hunting for these things for if we can never really sit down and relax and enjoy the fruits of what we're trying to achieve?
I think that if we get too attached to an outcome, we slip into a inefficient and more of a feed-based approach, because the brain has been told very clearly that if you don't achieve this, you're going to be a failure. If you don't achieve this, you're going to be lonely. If you don't achieve this, you're going to be humiliated. You're going to be abandoned. So the issue there is fear-based actions. The brain's polarized into looking at threats first rather than the opportunities to be better, the opportunities to connect. So I like this idea, right? When you go to do anything, including exercise, and this is as much for me as I'm learning, right? Don't look at your body at the skin level and go, whatever's under the skin is just stuff that works. And I'm just going to go and do what I do. And if I've got any pain, then I'm just going to see it as a nuisance that I'm just going to expect is going to go away. I think that we are literally deferring responsibility away from our most precious instrument that the brain needs to live and have a good life here. What if we decided to have X-ray vision and MRI vision, and that we actually looked at our body as an intricate, beautiful setup of muscular, skeletal, ligament, organs, and so much chemicals in between, all looking to give us precious moments of connection and fun, beautiful, meaningful experiences. And therefore, whenever we do anything, what is our body? How is it going? Is it being pushed a little bit too far? Do we need to restore the balance? And I think that restoring the balance, that the body is always in control and able to repair in timely ways, I think it'd be really cool then to understand that, as you say, prepare so that the body can do and do it well. Recover so that the body can do it again and do it well. And so that you are truly sustainable and able to have longevity of a quality of life. I think it's a wonderful thing that to be disciplined into looking at it as prepare, then do, which is the train, the exercise, the perform, and then recover. What a wonderful, responsible way to honor the body and honor the life that you have in front of you to get the most out of it.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, and that's what we're trying to do, help people see at the moment. Anyone that we get that comes into the gym now and into the recovery centre, is that we sit down and we talk to them first of all, and it gives the time to really assess and get them to open up a little bit about what they want to really achieve. And I'll be honest, I'd say probably about 80% of people, it's mainly to lose a little bit of weight.
Yeah.
But we don't want to stop there. Like losing weight's a great thing.
Yes, but you see, the body is out of balance if there's too much weight. But still, that's subjective to the individual thinking they need to lose weight. But you look at them and they look pretty good. It just means they're suddenly caught up in what society deems as the most attractive, and they want it, versus whether the body's really out of balance or not. It's a factor to look at, but more in detail rather than the prejudice of social pressure.
Exactly, and it's why we won't stop at just there and going, okay, well, that's what we'll try and do for you. It's looking at why.
Yeah.
Like for a lot of people just have this, like you said, a social almost obligation to be a certain way or to look a certain way or to act a certain way. So we talk to them and try to help them understand what it is they really want to achieve by losing weight. Like I've had clients in the past that they've had a goal and they've lost a certain amount of that, and they've actually realized that the way they feel at not the goal weight, is actually improved.
Oh, right.
Because they've started to understand what the weight loss has actually given them. It's not necessarily, if you are solely focused on the weight side of things and you don't go any deeper than that, then that's all it will ever be. And you will see people will lose 10 kilos, put 12 on, lose 10 kilos, put 14 on, lose 10 kilos, put 16 on. And you'll be constantly in this cycle. Whereas if we sit down and right from the very off point and we look at why is it you want to lose weight, great goal to have. It's going to improve your health if you lose weight. Can guarantee that. Obviously, if it's a healthy weight that you're going to lose. But why is it you want to lose weight? Like, what are the reasons behind it? Is it purely social constriction, or is it because you just want to feel better? Like you want to wake up in the morning and not have pain in your back.
Feel strong and agile, flexible, so that you can take on this world. You just want to be able to get out there and take on this world. And I think that purpose-based goals, EP7, the whole first 4 steps and much of step 5 is to get to a point that anything you do is built from the heart first. And which means the heart representing what is the quintessential reason, the most purest, beautiful, meaningful reason why you would do anything. And beyond survival, which is a very noble thing to be doing, staying alive, there is so much more that you can be doing to thrive. And I think too much of us are inheriting goals from culture and society's pressures that we're living for others to accept us, and we wonder why we rebel and resent following the action steps to achieve those goals. It's because we're not included in that process. We're just doing it so that people will accept us, when really innately we feel that we should be acceptable already. And so if you're ever going to lose weight, dig deeper to find why a balanced body honors you before other people are going to accept you, because that's really where you'll create sustainable weight loss, when you're doing it for you.
Exactly. It's people, like one big factor that I found through talking to people, whether it has been on the phone or face to face, is that when you sort of focus on this you thing, people are like, I'm not selfish. I've got my family to look after. I've got this person to look after. I've got this to do. I've got that to do. And all these other people rely on me. How can I be so selfish and focus on myself so much? And one of the big things is that we've come to believe that being selfish is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like, being selfish doesn't have to be a bad thing. It has bad properties like anything in life.
Yeah.
But the big belief that I find, that especially when with weight loss journeys and taking this time and this personal development of themselves is a selfish act that's going to react badly within their community. That people believe that they're not justified to be able to do it, so don't. And consistently sit in this place where they're unhappy because of these things that they believe about. They can't take time away because it's selfish.
Well, Joey, this could be a whole new podcast in itself.
Oh, yeah.
But I find it interesting that selfless people who have been raised to put themselves last look at people who are putting themselves first as incredibly self-absorbed and selfish. And they end up resenting them, and they end up being hostile towards them, which then creates a lot of friction. So the selfless person feels truly neglected, but they are already neglecting themselves, but they now can displace their attention and put the responsibility of them being looked after into the hands of the other people who are looking after themselves. Which, can you see the problem there? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm selfless, people are selfish, and then they get to live it out as reality.
Yeah.
On the other side is people who are so sick of being selfless and who end up swinging to the other side because they're disillusioned, they're traumatized by how they've been betrayed because they gave so much and got so little, and eventually they hardened. They became apathetic. They become selfish to the point where it is narcissistic, sociopathic, and then they end up isolating themselves and they end up being manipulative and exploitive. So in other words, we have a dilemma here where these extremes don't represent your heart, don't represent your purpose. You can't have meaningful relationships with yourself or anyone else. So at the end of the day, you're never really selfish if you're making yourself well enough to be great for yourself and others. And if people want the best of you, then where is the best of you going to come from if you aren't filling your own cup? In other words, you're energized enough, you're content enough to be incredibly present when someone else has a challenge or someone else wants to share an experience with you. You have the luxury of pouring all of you into that connection and honoring that person simply because your brain's not wandering with what bills to pay. Your injuries aren't hijacking your attention away from the moment and then, because you took care of that through preparation and recovery.
Exactly. And you know, one of the biggest things I've loved about having this conversation with you is the alignment that the physical has had with the mental. It's like, you know, such similarities in the way we deal with things, whether it's a physical issue or a mental issue, that having this preparation through all aspects of life, having the knowledge to understand not just how to go about things, but how to recover from things when issues arise, like broken relationships, passing away of loved ones, issues at home, issues with bills, issues in training, issues with performance. You know, they can all be dealt in a very, very similar way, but we tend to split them up and deal with them in such different ways because of our beliefs about certain situations. Like our belief about our physiological state has to be one way. Our belief about how our relationship should be another way. And how we deal with those two things are completely different.
Well, Joey, you know, that's why in step one we talk about fractal patterns. And it's like, if you understand why nature is constantly following a specific adaptation process, that is a fractal because it keeps playing out in every context of an organism in its environment. In other words, what do I need to be? I'm very clear about my purpose. I need to survive and find a way for me to grow to then create seedlings to procreate so that I am completing the cycle. That's a fractal, right?
Yeah.
So for us, this plays out in everything, including us and our bodies. right? So when you go to engage anything, what is your true purpose? Because once you understand your true purpose, you'll know in your preparation mode what version you need to be to optimize what the outcomes of the occasion. And then you're not perfect. Nature's not perfect. In other words, as it tries something, it may not get what it really wanted. In other words, I want more water because I want to grow higher. I've just stretched my roots in a particular direction, but I didn't get any water, which means now, but I'm noticing that in the other direction, I'm getting a little bit of water. So I'm now going to invest more of my resources to put more of my roots in this other area where I'm starting to get a little bit of water. I'm going to go deeper there. And lo and behold, I got the water there. In other words, in the recovery process where I am deficient, I'm not getting what I need to be balanced, I will adapt. I will adapt to restore balance. So eventually I am getting what I need to keep going. Nature does it. We're meant to do it. Yeah. So I do love the fact that we're getting to a point where we're learning, and it's a little overdue for me, but that's cool. I'll appreciate it with humility and the compassion for myself and others who are caught in that. We're getting to a point where we no longer think that slipping on joggers and doing a little gimmicky stretch because it's apparently what you need to do, a little bit like I'm talking 2 minutes of stretch and I'm going, oh, I'm good. And I'm dressed in the attire and I look good. That's my prep for exercise. Because that is to the extent, not where is my mental attitude needs to be, where is my physical body need to be? In other words, flexible enough, stretched enough, warm enough, so that it's nimble, it's able to not be traumatized because I've just shocked it into an occasion that it wasn't able to embrace because it wasn't conditioned for it. And in its shock, what did it do? It recoiled, hardened to protect itself because it thought it was in danger. And now you have a body that's locking up as a result. You see, when you understand that we're meant to do that in everyday life, in every area of our life, is to truly tune in and be aware of what's going on so that we're not assuming things that are not true and pouring that cortisol through, pumping it through the body so that we're locking up, because the locking up is overprotection. It's shutting down. It's disconnecting. We're not here to be disconnected. Oh. And most of the time, the disconnection is completely irrelevant, counterintuitive, counterproductive, and damaging. Unfortunately, a lot of injuries happen because of that. Hence the beauty of what you talk about in the preparation phase. Yeah. Training can be cool, but we're not perfect. No. And the body put into situations is going to handle it the best it can, but then it needs to be honored with where it fell short and where it needs attention. Finally, we can be mindful of that cycle, and it's great to have you a part of EP7 and to have recovery and preparation such an important part of our passion for being fit and for exercising and enjoying sport and honouring the instrument that we've got that is really, without it, we're not here.
Exactly, yeah.
So thank you, Joey.
My pleasure.
It's what a wonderful conversation that's given me so much for me when it comes to honouring every time I go to exercise. My exercise now, what I'm already thinking is it's an hour, half an hour maybe for the actual exertion in the training, but before and after is really me tuning into my body and giving it what it needs. And I look forward to ongoing conversations with you to start to really open up that world, because I think once people start to appreciate how to be more responsible for their body, I think we've got ourselves a wonderful way to be equipped to handle and live our purpose.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Let's keep the conversation going on the EP7 official Facebook page.